Hey there, guys. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Just want to do a quick sound check. If you can hear me, please respond in the chat. Yeah, not really talking anymore.
All good.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started now. Thanks everyone for joining our webinar. Today's series is actually an Ask Me Anything session for Qt Quick, and we actually have two hosts today, Mitch Curtis and JP. I guess during the session, if you have any questions, because this is a Q&A format, the way to actually submit these questions is to use the question dialog box that's part of the GoToWebinar session. And all questions will be, we'll just go through the questions as we receive them. This webinar is going to be recorded, and as soon as the session ends, you can get a copy of the session, the video session. You'll be able to watch that. And I hope you enjoy. So I'll hand it over to Mitch and JP.
Thanks, Andy. So does anyone have any questions to start it off, or? If not, we can answer some commonly asked questions that might be interesting. But it would be good to hear from the audience first. Okay, I guess we can take some of our commonly asked questions while we're waiting. Which one looks interesting? The most commonly asked question, I guess, these days is about table view and tree view. I think we might have also covered that in a previous webinar as well, maybe even.
Yes, probably. And it also comes up often on the blog posts that they are making. So, but yeah, we could cover a little bit what is the status of the table view right now to get started. So what we have done so far is a table that manages the item delegate creation in 2 dimensions. And we have also added support for proper model columns in the underlying item view framework or the delegate model, so that in the future you can have table views with proper model columns instead of having to reuse or abuse rows as columns like you did with Controls 1. There is still a bunch of stuff missing. For example, we don't still have any headers. We don't have sections, transitions, selection, and so on. So there is still plenty of stuff to do. But all in all, the work is starting to show pretty promising. Like we have really fast scrolling in both dimensions, which is good. Because table view 1 was really problematic from the performance perspective. So now we have tackled the most important issue.
I tried it out, the table view, on an embedded device, Nitrogen 6, and put a bunch of buttons in there as delegates, and that worked really well. It's quite fast compared to the old controls table view. So, but we have a bunch of questions now.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a question about can we talk about some tips and tricks using the new controls? Mitch, do you have any tips and tricks?
Yes. The one that I like, I don't know if this was in the old controls, is the focus policy. Because it's quite useful to turn that off, I think, to set Qt.noFocus. I think that's the one.
Yeah.
Because then in a UI, you're often expecting that certain keys will do certain things, and that especially, yeah, with the projects that I've been working on, at least, I can't have other controls having focus. And I don't know if there was a way to tackle that in Controls 1. I think it was...
No, the focus behavior was pretty much hard-coded into the controls themselves, so there was no good way to customize it anyway from the outside.
So that's a really nice thing in Controls too, I think. It's a really simple thing, but the focus policy is quite useful.
It's actually a concept that we adapted from widgets, so it's long yeah,
that makes sense.
A feature with long history in Qt, but yeah, we decided to adapt it. There have been lots of focus improvement requests from the users, what came to the problems in Controls 1, and then that's where the idea came from, that we decided to give more control to the users. My personal favorite tip is to use C++ for functionality and declare UIs in KML, and then follow the natural flow of information when you are combining the two, so that you basically emit signals from C++, and then from KML you read and write properties and react to signals and call methods to C++, but there is rarely need to call key object find child and use those other methods to dig into the KML object tree from C++. It usually ends up being a bit dirty if you call meta object by passing the function name, for instance, and then you go on and refactor things, and then things start breaking.
Probably a good rule for that is if you're using it outside of tests, find child outside of tests, then you might be doing something wrong. It can be useful for finding items in your UI when you're doing auto tests, but yeah.
What's next? A classic question. In what kind of situations can I use Qt Quick or Qt Widgets? And which of these technologies is better from the point of view of computational performance? Do you want to start?
I can start. In what kind of situations can I use Qt Quick or Qt Widgets? I would say personally, if you're doing a really desktop-centric application like Photoshop or some UI that's got basically for power users, like a CAD program or something like that, or anything that should look like a desktop application, then widgets would be a good choice. But if you have to style it to look a certain way, to style it to look non-native, for example, then I would use Qt because I don't like styling with widgets at all. So that's my personal preference.
Yeah, I guess that summarizes it pretty well. Like classic desktop applications with widgets, and they're pretty good at it. And Qt for modern, highly animated, flashy, bling UIs.
And the performance side of it, I don't really know the answer to that one because, I mean, Qt is using OpenGL most of the time. Sometimes it uses a software backend, I guess, if you're on like a lower end device. But widgets is using the, well, usually it uses the raster paint engine, right? But it can also use OpenGL. But okay. I think, I don't know, what would you say about the performance side of that? It depends.
Yeah, it depends.
Widgets also has some stuff about not repainting the whole scene, right? You can do, I think it was, is it graphics view, if I'm not mistaken, where you can, it has some knowledge of what has changed and it can repaint only those areas. Whereas Qt using OpenGL, which does full repaints of the scene graph every frame, I think. I know, I might be stepping out of my territory here. That's not really my area, but yeah.
Should we move on to the next question? Qt Controls 1 was marked as deprecated, but Controls 2 has a lot of controls missing compared to 1. Are there any plans to fill these gaps to make it easier to port? Yes, to some extent at least. I guess our number one goal is to fill those gaps between Controls 1 and 2. If I remember correctly, what is missing currently are pretty much split view, table view, and tree view, I think. And it also depends what you actually include as Controls 1. The dialogues are also missing. It's technically it's a separate module, but it's yeah.
And the extras, not really controls. They're kind of extras. So, but we do have some of the extras in Controls 2, like the delay button at least, and the dial actually.
But yes, I guess the answer in short is that yes, we are planning to fill the gaps, and it's not easy to give a concrete timeline when all of the features have been when they are all done, but we are working on it. And the next question is asking that in iPhone 10, the UI doesn't seem to harm natural behavior as seen in iOS 11 apps. It doesn't cover the entire screen. It shows a black bar at the top. It is something to do with control settings. To me, this sounds like something that the Qt for iOS platform port needs to handle. It's probably not something we can, well, I hate to push it to someone else's plate, but I mean, it's probably not something we can do in controls. It's a little bit lower in the stack to manage the screen dimensions and what kind of geometry a full screen window gets.
Do we have some older ones up there? Oh.
Want to cover that?
What is the best way to look at speed improvements for Qt Quick applications on embedded devices that have no GPU and X11 environment? Embedded devices that have no GPU and X11 environment.
What is the best way to look at speed improvements?
So no GPU implies the software renderer, right?
Yeah.
The first thing I would say is, or I would ask is, I guess, have you profiled it and found any bottlenecks specifically? But a common one, I guess, could be heavy delegates. If you're putting too much into your delegates within your views, then that can be a bottleneck on the lower end devices.
Yeah.
Any suggestions? It's kind of hard to say without.
In general, keeping things simple, of course, usually leads to good performance. Simple declarative UIs. It's especially in the beginning when you start KML programming, it's difficult to switch to the, how to say, declarative mindset. You have, like, if you have C++ programming background, you tend to easily overuse signal handlers to do things. Just like you would connect to signals in C++, you try to react to changes by implementing signal handlers, when in many cases you can get away with declaring a simple binding between things. So the simple declarative bindings are often much more efficient than using a lot of signal handlers.
And JavaScript, I guess. Well, yeah, that implies JavaScript probably. But another thing, I guess, would be if you only load what you need to load. If you've got a lot of pages, for example, in a stack view, not in a stack view, but in some kind of setup where you have lots of pages that should be shown, only show what you need to show. You can use loaders sometimes to get advantages, depending on how you do it, to load stuff lazily, kind of on demand when you need it. That's some ideas, I guess.
Next question is about the material controls. Can we have material controls in C++? As the styling architecture of controls 2 is designed, we have chosen to implement the material style ourselves in KML. So there is no C++ API to offer, unfortunately. However, we plan to publish some of the templates API, C++ APIs in the future, so that if you implement your own custom styles, then you can utilize more and more C++ if you want.
What's the next one? What new languages and tools should I know to start to switch from Qt Widgets to Qt Quick, JavaScript, CSS, HTML? To switch from Qt Widgets to Qt Quick. Yeah, languages, QML and JavaScript, the most important ones. I mean, you still need the C++, but if you know Qt Widgets, you probably already know that. CSS, not really. HTML. if these are examples of languages you might need to know to switch to Qt Quick, then just QML and JavaScript. I don't think CSS and HTML would be too useful. Maybe QML has or Qt Quick has a canvas item, which HTML also has. So there's some similarities there. As far as tools, you got
the same creator tool works for both.
Yeah.
Just a comment about the JavaScript. I think you don't really need to know all the complex bells and whistles. Pretty basic JavaScript knowledge is perfectly fine with QML.
You want to do most of the heavy lifting in C++ anyway, if you want to, but it's quicker, it's more performant to do it in C++, like JP said.
Okay.
We have a large Controls 1 code base. Would you recommend to port that to Controls 2? The sensible answer, I guess, would be depends. What's your budget? What's your motivation? I mean, we would say yes as developers of Controls 2, because we want you to be using the latest and greatest. But certainly, if you have the means to do so, if you have the time and the budget, I did that with my projects. This is a bit of a biased answer, but I would definitely recommend it, yeah.
Just to interject here, maybe you could explain like what are the advantages of moving from Qt Quick Controls 1 to Qt Quick Controls 2? Why would you consider doing it anyway?
Yeah, so the story behind this whole Qt Quick Controls 2 project is that when we started running Qt Quick Controls 1 on embedded devices and mobile platforms, we of course run into, well, big performance problems. So the whole project was actually kicked off as a research project that was trying to find a way to run controls on low and embedded devices. So the very first blog post that we wrote about this was actually titled Qt Quick Controls for Embedded, if I remember correctly. But later on, we actually found nice ways to apply styling on it. Back then, there was only one fixed development style. There was no way to switch between different styles. But we found a way to implement that without sacrificing performance. And in the end, when we did the first release of Qt Quick Controls 2, the performance difference between Controls 1 and 2 was on average 7 times. So there is actually a huge difference in the performance. So if you have anyhow complex UI, for instance, a lot of controls there, then you really start seeing the difference in startup time, how long it takes time to instantiate the UI. And then naturally, if you're targeting any low-end device, then it might be a good option to look at a lot lighter controls that we have now.
The porting itself is kind of, well, I want to say straightforward. I mean, there is a kind of one-to-one between the old controls and the new controls. And we also do have documentation explaining the differences between the two, a table and stuff that you can kind of get an idea of what you're going to have to do. But I think the process shouldn't be too bad. It should be quite pain-free.
Yes, at the moment, the biggest problem is probably the fact that some of the controls are still unfortunately missing, like table view, tree view, and split view. But it is, of course, one possibility to use those missing controls from controls one, because you can still mix the two. That's also one possibility.
We are revamping our web server embedded code. We are thinking about HTML5. Can Qt be used to replace web-based presentation to the user? If so, what is involved? Revamping our web server. You're thinking about HTML5, but can Qt be used to replace web-based presentation? It's a good question.
Yeah, I guess now we are a bit outside our comfort zone, but at least I'm aware of the, what was it called, KML Web project, which is trying to do this.
But I wonder if the question is really, I mean, can it be used to replace web-based presentation? Is that, do you mean serving web content, or if it's just replacing the UI of a web-based presentation, then certainly you can replace it with Qt and Qt Quick. Correct, just replacing the UI. Yeah, certainly, yep. And I would argue that it's even easier to do that kind of stuff in QML. It's a great language for prototyping, and it's, yeah, I would say certainly, yep.
Okay, in which version of Qt there will be no need to reload the view of the Qt Quick Designer in the button in the upper right corner, so that the components added automatically can be seen?
Sounds like a question for the creator team.
Yeah, it sounds like something that should just work. The Qt Quick Designer is improving a lot, or has been improving a lot lately. So if you are facing some issues, then one option might be to double check if you're actually running the latest version. There is a good chance that something has been already fixed.
And if not, do create a bug report for it. If there's not already one, because maybe the developers are unaware of it. So.
Okay, is it possible and safe to mix Qt Quick Controls 1 and 2? We actually covered that a little bit already in one of the earlier questions. Yes, it is possible. That was actually one of the release criteria for Controls 2, that we had to make it possible in the KML engine to allow mixing two major versions of basically the same module. There are, however, certain caveats, like Qt Quick Controls 1 does not, unfortunately, support the automatic high DPI scaling, which was introduced in Qt 5.6, I think. And Controls 2 is, on the other hand, based on the automatic high DPI scaling. So the whole scalability in Controls 1 is relying on the automatic high DPI scaling. So if you run a high DPI device and you mix the two different major versions, then you might end up with unexpected results, because well, they apply different type of scaling.
Would it be all right, assuming they set the enable high DPI scaling thing? Should it just work, or?
The problem is that Controls 1 is using widget styles under the hood, and then they are applying manual scale factors depending on the default text size of the platform all around the styles, and it's actually a lot of, or it would be a lot of work to fix that. But since we already had controls 2, then yeah, we did not start refactoring the entire controls 1 code base because of that.
Also, it looks like for that question, there's a follow-up that specifically about the missing split view feature from Qt Quick Controls 2, like mix and matching.
Yes. Split view is, it doesn't sound anyhow problematic. It's all about, well, putting the splits next to each other and having a resize handle between. So I don't see any big scaling issues there, especially since the handle, the resize handle is actually a replaceable delegate. So in the end, you can decide how big it is. So if the default delegate scales too big, then you can replace it in the end. But split view is on the to-do list, so it will probably be part of controls 2 in the near future.
Also, is there a cost per device to run Qt on our product? Have to ask the salespeople that, I think.
I'm afraid, yeah, we have to redirect you to the.
We know nothing about that kind of stuff. I mean, we, yeah. I don't know.
Okay, next question.
I think
okay, it's more like a comment. So yeah, you could also port incrementally to controls 2, since controls 1 and 2 can live together in the same project. Very nice comment. Yes, indeed.
Is there a plan to have Qt Widget in Qt Quick Controls 2? QB?
There have been some discussions. No concrete plans at the moment. If you want to have doc widget and Qt Quick content, of course, one option which works already today is to use Quick Widget. So you can have a Q main window with doc widgets and then put Qt Quick content inside those using Quick Widget.
But no immediate plans. I don't think. Yeah, that's not something that's on our roadmap, at least. So, do we have any other questions? Something that's been annoying you? You want to ask a question about it? Why is this thing broken? What did you eat for breakfast? Stuff like that.
I think there is one question that we actually missed. Why does UI controls with graphical effects show as black rectangle on iOS with Qt 5.10? Sounds like a bug to me.
Yeah.
Definitely not the intention.
I guess if it was,
it would be useful to have a bug report with a little bit of information.
But if it wasn't deployed properly, it probably just wouldn't run at all, right? So it's probably not an issue of missing plugin.
Are the buttons, etc., fully touch aware? Yes, since Qt 5.9 we have added touch event handlers into controls. So now things like buttons and sliders, they are fully touch aware. They support multi-touch.
How will Qt Quick 2 work with Sean's new input handlers? Qt Quick 2. I haven't used the input handlers too much myself, but my understanding of it is that they would replace, for example, mouse area with an attached property. So it would be an attached signal handler that you would use to respond to events. Not sure. Yeah, I think that's the general idea. But there's also a bunch of different types that handle different gestures and stuff, like pinching, etc.
Okay. Not being too familiar with Qt, is the Qt model client-server based, or does the entire UI code run on, say, an embedded device?
Client-server based. I think the entire UI code runs on an embedded device. Just answer to that question, unless I'm mistaken. That's how I would interpret that question.
Yeah, if I can interject, it's a bit of both. So yes, technically that's the right answer, that like the whole UI runs on the device, but that doesn't stop you from having a client-server based architecture. So you can do either.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions?
I guess I can ask a question. It'd be interesting to know what are each of you working on right now? What's your current topic of interest?
Me personally, I'm finishing up the palette support. In Qt 5.10 we added this new image-based style, and there was a necessity for the designers to be able to, well, design the whole UI using images, but then the last remaining bit that is not possible to specify by images was basically text colors. So for that we added support for palettes, but we didn't get all the style finished in time for Qt 5.10. We ported the default style. Well, the image style was based on palettes, and then the fusion style. So we still have a couple of styles, the material style and the universal style. And the challenge with those is that they actually have two themes. They have dark and light theme. So I'm working on finishing up that at the moment. What about you, Mitch?
I'm a bit all over the place at the moment. I haven't been doing so much on controls too, but been fixing.
You just implemented dense.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. The dense material style for desktop, so it's a bit more compact, a bit better for desktop UIs. That will be in 5.12.
Yes.
Yeah. But besides that, I've just been working on various bugs, bug fixing. It's got to be done.
Another question from me, at least. Do you think there'll be a C++ API for using Qt controls in any time in the near future?
For the templates, at least, yes. I suppose the first public classes will be Qt control and Qt action. Action is traditionally something that people want to fiddle with from C++, so that we have already prepared so that we are ready to publish it. But what comes to instantiating controls from C++ is a bit tricky because they are actually registered as the whole instantiation is based on registering KML types. So it at the moment it needs the KML engine to create the correct instance. So if you just create an instance of, let's say, Qt button, it's actually the template, which is an empty, non-visual. It only implements the logic. Okay, then we have more questions. General question, why would someone use Qt to develop a UI for Windows PC as opposed to using Visual Studio and C#? Mitch?
I would say if you want to port that UI to another platform later on, then Qt would be a better choice. But if it's just a Windows-only UI, then there are still some advantages to using Qt, especially if you're already familiar with it. It can be, well, I found it quite easy to learn when I started using Qt, so that would be my argument. It's really about what's the easiest to use, I think, that gets the job done.
Okay, that was what are the benefits? It was just a continuation of the previous question.
So we've got another question here. It says, you mentioned that the new table view will be able to use columns instead of row. Will existing views like list view or repeater be able to use that too? Will using roles in models still be the usual way to expose models to QML?
I don't know about the usual way. The plan is to make both work, so you can continue using roles as columns if you want to, but we just add support for, when I said proper model columns, I mean multiple columns from the model count of the column Q abstract item model. Using those with list view, that one I don't know actually, because the way we expose data for the item view delegates is you need to know the column at that point, and for list view it's always the first column. So I guess then you would have to manually call or fetch data from the model to be able to use the other columns. Of course, we could add support for specifying which model column you are using if you are using list view, because it can only present one column from the model out of the box.
What about the possibility to remove a polygon to remove a polygon inside a map polygon, to have a transparent hole in map polygon. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that one, unfortunately. I'm assuming that's...
I guess neither of us has too much experience with Git location.
Yeah, I think with that, it may be more possible going forward now that we have proper support for shapes in Qt Quick. And so since maps is going to be the mapping and Qt location APIs are going to start using shapes, it might be more doable because otherwise it's quite expensive to do, at least with OpenGL, that kind of clipping. Yeah, I can ask another question. Do you guys have any? I know a lot of developers have personal projects that they have. You're working on anything cool for research or personal project you'd like people to know about?
Yeah, I'm working on a game at the moment. I've been working on it for a few years. Just a 2D isometric game using Qt and Qt Quick. And along the way, I've been working on a pixel art editor, like a bitmap editor, for creating art for the game. And that's also Qt Quick Controls. That one is open source. It's called Slate. Yeah, I'm mostly working on the game after work. And Slate, the pixel art editor, every time I need to fix a bug or I want something new, then I just add it. Yeah.
My side projects, one of them was implementing KML APIs for native controls. That's something that we have been researching. It's been a bit on and off project. Every now and then someone picks it up and continues a little bit. Implementing native styles for controls too is a big challenge these days because UIs have become so dynamic. They are full of transitions. So even if you get the static look and looks right, then you are still lacking behind the feel part. And then, yeah, we wanted to try out a little bit how it would be if you could use KML to instantiate real native controls.
And that's kind of ongoing, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's all the questions we have for now, and I guess we can wrap things up. So yeah, thanks Mitch and JP for having this session, and yeah, I hope you and the audience enjoyed. And if you have any more questions, don't feel shy. You can actually send us an email at info@qt.io, and we'll be able to answer those questions there. Also, don't forget to visit our website, qt.io. We have all kinds of interesting information there. And that's it. And the next webinar we'll have is on March 6th. It'll be on Qt Tech Support. We'll have someone from Qt Support answering just any random question and giving tips about what you can do with Qt. So thanks, and I hope you have a great day. And Until next time, goodbye.
Thanks.